Welcome to week 3 of Uncharted. You know, can you imagine going someplace that you've never been before without your Maps app, without your navigation system in your car, without a physical map? I mean, that would be frightening because I'm not talking about someplace you've been multiple times, or you've been there several times in your life and you can figure out where you go. I'm talking about places you've never seen before. I mean, why don't people feel comfortable doing that, right? It's like you're going off map, and that's ultimately what Uncharted is. It's when you go off map where there's no roads, where there's no clear paths. And when you go off map, you experience a lot of firsts in your life. You see things for the first time. You experience things for the first time. And that, when you look at that, a lot of times people steer away from something new. But let me ask you this question. When was the last time you did something for the first time? When was that? And for most of us, you have to think real hard about that because you haven't. Like, you went someplace you've never been before. You ate something you've never eaten before, right? You experienced something you've never experienced. When was the last time that happened? But people don't do that because it's uncomfortable. It's out of the way and out of the ordinary. It might be painful, right? It's like a friend of mine had a dog years ago. He had a golden retriever, and that golden retriever, he kept him in the yard, but the yard had an underground electric fence, and he had a collar on the dog. And through the years, that dog learned that you don't go beyond the fence. And then one day, the battery was wearing down on the collar, and my friend was sitting in a chair in his front yard watching his dog walk through the yard when he watched other dogs on the other side of the fence just walking freely down the road. And he saw his dog back up and get this running start. And he had never seen him do this before. He ran as fast as he could right toward the electric fence. And as he was getting there, he jumped and went through the air over that fence. And he said his whole body was shaking until he hit the ground on the other side and went taking off with the other dogs. But when he did that, it was like, why would he do that? He'd never done that before, because for him, the gain was worth the pain. The gain of being free on the other side with other dogs, that was worth the pain and discomfort of the moment. And I think so often in our lives, we have to determine, is the gain that God has for us worth the pain and discomfort of stepping out into a new thing and trusting Him and experience firsts that God has for you and I. But yet we settle for the safe and predictable. But every first in our lives is a growth opportunity where we learn more and we trust God more. As you read through the Exodus, you see so many firsts. In Exodus 17, I kind of want to camp out there with you for a few minutes because it's a passage where it's the first story that God told Moses to write down. It's also the first battle that the Israelites ever fought since leaving slavery in Egypt. And it's also the first time Joshua was ever mentioned. And it's interesting because in Exodus 13, God actually steered them away from a battle right after they came out of Egypt. And he took them, Scripture says, on a roundabout way around the Philistines and led them to the Red Sea. And so that, when he did that, he knew they weren't ready for battle. But now they are. And in Exodus 17, I want to kind of look at it and talk about some off-map lessons for all of us when we step into the unknown. What is it that we need to learn? And the first takeaway I'd give you is that every battle that you and I face, it's both physical and spiritual. It is seen and it's unseen. And so many times we don't step in and we don't realize that your battle is on multi levels. And in Exodus 17, the scripture says in verse 8, when the people of Israel were still at Rephidim, the warriors of Amalek attacked them. Moses commanded Joshua, choose some men to go out and fight the army of Amalek for us. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill, holding the staff of God in my hand. And Joshua was going down to fight, and Moses was going up to pray. And the staff of God represented the power of God. Remember, we've talked about that in this series, that he was going to lift that up. He was going to be in prayer and lifting and praying for the battle that's going on in the valley. I'm going to tell you, Joshua, he probably had to be thinking, how did I get this gig? I mean, I'm going down to the valley to go to war with an army, and we've never fought before, and you're going up to the mountain with a stick. So I might die, you might get a splinter. This just doesn't seem right to me. But yet, this means that, for you and I, that you see the story being played out. There's two things we have to do. When we have conflicts and battles in our lives, we have to fight and we have to pray. And it's because you and we have to pray as if everything depends on God. And we have to work as if everything depends on us. It's both ends. Because you're going to fight battles in your life that you can't win. See, what happens on the hill in prayer impacts what happens in the valley of the battles. So when you're going through conflicts and battles, are you praying? I know I'm not talking about just kind of like God bless the food prayer. I'm not talking about this, lead, guide, and direct us prayer. I'm talking about, are you pouring your heart out to God? Are you on your face before God? Are you asking him to intervene and move? Because you've got to get this. I mean, when you understand that that prayerlessness on our part makes us powerless, that prayer moves the hand of God in our lives. Only God can move the mountains, but faith and prayer move God. And you see that in the battle in Exodus 17. In verse 10, it says, so Joshua did what Moses had commanded, and he fought the army of Amalek. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. That was the battle. The battle was won or lost based on Moses lifting the staff of God or lowering it. See, here's the thing. Hands up prayer is what shifts everything on the battlefields of our lives. Your prayer moves the supernatural. When you pray, all of heaven pays attention. Think about that. When you pray, all of heaven's angels stand at attention. God's resources are moved on your behalf. There's so much power in that. But how many of us are dropping our hands? How many of us, we've just given up praying for our marriages. We've stopped praying for our kids. It seems hopeless. We've stopped praying about that our lives will be any different. We've just dropped our hands. It's time to raise your hands again and say, God, I need your intervention. And that's what you see in Moses' life. See, prayer, a lot of people say, I want to pray and I want God to give me control of the situation and the circumstances. I want to win. No, you don't understand that. That's not what prayer is. Prayer is not how you secure control. Prayer is how you surrender control. It's how you say, God, I'm trusting you with the outcome. This is yours. And that's where your prayer is as much about changing you as it is your circumstances. And the other thing that you see is the importance of this, that friends change the outcome of all of your battles. For Moses, Moses was getting tired, but he made a decision before he went up to the top of the hill that he brought Aaron and Hur with him. He brought, the people that he trusted, that he loved, to walk up with him. I mean, and let me kind of take it there in verse 12 and 13. Moses' arms soon became so tired he could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands. So his hands held steady until sunset. And as a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek in battle. Moses would have quit if Aaron and Hur were not with him. Some of you, you've quit because you've isolated and you've moved away from friends, and you don't want to share your heartbreak and your pains and your embarrassment with close friends. You can't isolate. You need friends to hold up your hands. You need friends to come alongside you. That's exactly what Moses understood, that prayer was a battle and he needed support. And what I love is that's what you're doing right now. I mean, you're here in small group with people. Some of you, this is a major step in your life. Keep moving. Keep stepping in. Keep spending time with others. You're going to need a band of brothers and sisters to do life with. And that's exactly what Moses discovered. And you're going to sit down and look in a minute at Isaiah 43, verses 18 and 19, and kind of study about that scripture that I love that says that God is doing a new thing. Can't you see it? He's making ways through the wilderness. I mean, he is carving a path for you. But it's a new thing. It's a first. And you've got to trust him with it. Enjoy spending time talking about Isaiah 43 around your tables.